Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from John and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello, everybody. It's John Pollock and Wai Ting live on a Wednesday night following Dynamite in front of 3,000 people. How are you, Wai?
Doing all right, John? Yeah, I am. I think so. As I'm hearing my voice, maybe not that great, but better than Monday. Yes.
What's wrong now?
Nothing. I just have a bit of a hoarse voice, I guess, maybe from coughing, but
Okay.
I'm good otherwise.
You're migraine free?
Migraine free.
Oh,
which
that's
is
tremendous.
Yes. Did not need to borrow the Excedrin over from your place, but thank you very much for the offer.
Yeah, I got some feedback from people. They think it's mind-blowing that we don't, literally mind-blowing, that we don't have it in Canada.
I mean, I'm sure there's some reason for it. I mean, I don't want to get into it. I'm sure it's political and it'll probably make somebody angry.
I doubt it's political. Not everything is political, you know.
No, you don't think so? Oh, okay.
Some countries just don't allow for your head to be cured, such as Canada. So,
I don't know if it's that, but all right.
Listen, as we're getting into this election cycle, that country needs all the Excedrin it can handle. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
They're in
that's
for a
right.
rough couple of months.
I think we'll need it too.
We're kind of
soon
just up north. We're just observing and seeing what's going on. I mean,
I think it affects almost everybody, but
yeah.
I mean,
will we do an election preview before November?
Not you and I,
No?
but you're welcome to. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, if you do want to hear me talk about non-wrestling related things, you can check out MCU Later from Tuesday night, where I joined Rich Van and WH Park to chat about Deadpool and Wolverine. And I don't know if I added anything to this conversation, but I felt like I got a backstage pass to listen to those two discuss this movie from the weekend that has been quite the hit. And I'm figuring most people have probably seen this by now, or they're going to be seeing it this week. Or they don't care. One of those three buckets.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I feel like you could spoil away. Okay, if you really wanted to see it, you probably would have made some time. All right, I don't care.
Everyone died. It was a bloody murder at the end, and every A-lister showed up for this.
Yeah, no, we won't spoil it for you, but we encourage you to listen to the spoiler review anyway, because John, we're going to be talking a lot about presents and promises, and you fulfilled both of those by promising that you're going to be there. You made it. And you were present, and boy, were you present. That I think is a gift enough, to hear John Pollock sitting on the conversation and give I would say a very well informed opinion throughout the conversation about this movie.
Yes, I had lots to share, so you can listen to that for my comic book recommendations, my thoughts on the Avengers, the new cast, San Diego Comic-Con breakdown, all these things. On the Deadpool and Wolverine review with Rich and WH, and hopefully I didn't drag down the franchise too much with my limited engagement appearance. I don't know if I'll be invited back, but
you created you created the franchise, John. So you have every right, I think, to.
I don't know about that. There's a brand new MCU Later shirt, and I am nowhere to be found on it. And by all means, I shouldn't be. I have nothing to do with MCU Later, but this shirt is.
Do I sense some bitterness about not being on the brand new MCU Later shirt?
I'm a little jealous. This is one of the nicest shirts we've put out, courtesy of the great Josh Rosen.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, shut up.
I'm on top of this
BMP.
way. I know what's going on. Look at Wai, who just finds his way onto this award-winning shirt.
Yeah, you are very quick. So quick, in fact, that I have to take some time to filibuster as I bring this up onto our screen here. But yes, as John mentioned, 10% off your first order, of course. But at chop-tees.com/MCU Later, the newest shirt for our friends at MCU Later with Rich Fan and WH Park, a rendition of, I believe, a Power Man Iron Fist cover. Done in the stylings of that, and featuring Rich, WH, as well as some special Easter egg hunts. Scrump, I believe this is, Nate Milton, and who's holding the Infinity Gauntlet? Me, all right? I'm the Thanos of this shit. I got every stone, time stone, reality, what do you call it? What are the other ones? Power, all of it. whatever. I could do whatever I want. I could take their words. I could reverse it. I could spin it around. I could replace them with AI. I could do whatever I want, but I won't because the show is already perfect as it is, as it was last night.
Does that mean you're also cable?
Yes, I'm everybody. I could be whoever I want, but yes. Great job to those guys for taking us throughout the entire 2 months through this X-Men journey, and great job to you, John, for joining them for the finale.
For one, yes. All right, we are continuing our G1 coverage. Later tonight, we will be releasing the latest G1 podcast involving Bruce Lord and Kate from Montreal as they are recapping the last 2 days of shows, including today's show in, I don't know where today's show is. Yamagata, perhaps?
It doesn't matter.
Well, we'll talk a little bit
it's
about
in Japan.
In Japan, yes, yes. So that is coming out, and more cafe shows coming out in the coming days. Friday, we'll have a Rewind Away covering Unforgiven 2001. There's no Rewind to SmackDown this Friday night because we are heading to Cleveland, and I don't think we will be attending SmackDown. We're going to try and get something up before in its place, but regardless, we'll be up live Saturday night for everyone, chatting SummerSlam, and then Sunday, we have got a special doubleheader with the G1 show with WH Park and Eric Marcotte, and a collision course with John Cena and Kate from Montreal.
We're going to try to record a road trip, type of diary before SummerSlam, just to kind of
maybe while we're stuck at the border.
We'll see. Yeah, we are going down with two people with foreign passports, and therefore,
what could happen?
We could spend a bit of time down there. Sure. Yeah, we'll record something for exclusively for the patrons. Whether or not it's wrestling related, we'll kind of keep you guys updated on our trip.
Okay, so look out for that. PostWrestlingCafe.com. It's $6 to jump on board. It gives you 30 days access, and that will carry you through the end of the G1, and also gives you bonus shows, including Rewind Away, which Wai and I, we put a lot of effort into these shows, and we're going back to September of 2001 when we were two fresh-faced kids in grade 11, I think we would have been in 2001 in September, and we'll be chatting the main event, the match that was so incredible. Brian Clark and Brian Adams were told, you know what, guys, that was so amazing. We're not going to have you back after this. We're done, and we will go into the chronic Undertaker Kane 10-minute debacle that came out. Maybe the legacy of this show beyond Kurt Angle or Stephanie McMahon or Stacy Keibler. There's a lot on this show. There's a lot, and
why didn't this get covered in the? I guess Who Killed WCW? Did this end up killing WCW even though it was already dead?
This was the first necrophilia angle because they took the corpse and that was this match in September of 2001. A dreadful presentation of professional wrestling involving Chronic, The Undertaker, and Kane. Like, how on paper you could look at this and said, how can this miss?
I'm sure some version of it in some alternate reality, this might have been decent. Yeah.
Yes. All right. All that and more coming up this week. PostWrestlingCafe.com. We go into the news, and today on Pollock and Thurston, we went over a lot of big stories. So I'm not going to rehash all of what we just spoke about Wednesday afternoon, but the key stories that Brandon and I covered was Brandon's great reporting on how Las Vegas got WrestleMania 41 for next year. And this, Brandon made an information request and received 2,900 pages of documents in relation to this deal, and he has compiled a report and broken it down for all of us to know all the ins and outs. He got graphs, he got emails, he got it all, and he just did a great job reporting on this. So we spent the first half of the show going over that as well.
What is that, like 2 gigs of a PDF? How do you fit 2,900 pages into a file?
I think it's like in the Tim Allen movie, The Santa Claus, when the following year comes and the elves show up and they've got the Christmas list and they just fill up the boxes. His whole house is full of boxes.
Yes, okay.
That's what they do.
It.
The elves from Las Vegas brought all these.
What
documents.
do you think the dude said when like the guy who was at the request department when he hit send? He's like, "Oh, this guy, you want this? All right, you got it."
I'm thinking with Brandon Thurston's reputation, that person was like, And it was like their final act before they were handing in their 2 weeks notice. They're like,
is that right?
Here you go, Brandon. Brandon will find this. Okay, so that's there as well. Richard Boulware, Judge Richard Boulware, officially rejecting the UFC's settlement attempts with the plaintiffs, the Kung Lee and Cajun Johnson antitrust cases. So I reached out today, and I did get a statement from Eric Kramer, who is the lead attorney for the plaintiffs. That is up on the site. Essentially, what Eric Kramer responded to this is that they are willing to sit down with the UFC and renegotiate a settlement, but they are also going with the notion that this could be going to trial, because not only did Richard Boulware reject the settlement, but there's going to be a status conference for the parties to engage on August 19th, and they have set a trial date for the end of October for the Kung Lee class of fighters. So the plaintiffs are going with the belief that we could be going to trial, but we're still open to settling this with something that is more to Richard Boulware's approval. The UFC put out a statement afterwards, and they are not so happy about this decision. This was thought to be an enormous weight off their shoulders by getting rid of these antitrust cases and signing a check for $335 million and being told that's it. So their statement included, "We obviously disagree with this ruling and believe it disregards the expertise of counsel from both sides, as well as that of an accomplished and expert mediator, all of whom have decades of experience in antitrust case law." This is basically, come on, Richard Boulware, what do you know? "It prevents the athletes from receiving what they have argued is in their best interest and unwinds an extensively negotiated settlement that, in the plaintiff's counsel's own words, would far surpass the typical antitrust class action settlement." So there's more to this statement as well, but they as well are willing to engage in separate settlement discussions for the Kung Lee and Johnson cases. But as I mentioned with Brandon, this is very tricky, because it's like, wait, if you and I had a dispute and privately we reached a resolution that was to your liking and I agreed to.
We get into a minor fender bender with each other. We
Yes.
agreed to settle outside of the courts, but a cop finds us and I guess tells us,
or we go to court and you tell me, hey, there's $2,000 worth of damages. I say, okay, I'll pay you $2,000. And the judge is stating that's too little. And you don't really want to go to court. You're happy with the $2,000. I just want this to go away, and $2,000, I get rid of this. But they are being told that this is not enough. Like the plaintiffs made too strong of a case. And listen, I don't think Judge Boulware is just trying to be a shit disturber here. I think he's looking at, this is an industry that is very fraught with top end control by this dominant player in the market that is the UFC. And you're going to have different opinions based on what class of fighter you are. There are some fighters in the Kung Lee case that are looking at real significant payouts from this. There's also ones more so in the Cajun Johnson tier that sign these waivers, and they are capped at $3,000. So they are totally getting very little out of this. There's no structural changes to the contracts, nothing meaningful. They're not changing their ability to have freedoms. These are current fighters, and they're not even getting a massive paycheck, which at least quite a few of the other fighters are that don't have these waivers. Like, you're talking about fighters. If you're being told you're going to get $125,000, that's not an insignificant amount for some of these fighters, and they're so close to getting that. And this could be a protracted court case that could yield nothing. Like, there could be a jury. All you need is one jury member to not really have that belief that the fighters are wronged, and they could get nothing out of this. At least there's something that they can guarantee with this $335 million. So it's a tricky one, and I am very curious to see how the TKO stock reacts to this, because this was considered a big victory for the UFC, that this only was going to cost them $335 million, as opposed to billions and billions that we're talking about if you're talking treble damages of the upper end. Like, we're talking almost $5 billion could be the worst case outcome for them, and that's a tough one to swallow. I mean, you'd have to, that's a couple of spheres that they would have to maybe take off the books for a $5 billion payout. But we also have to talk about Shane McMahon. The photo seen around the world. So Fightful and Wrestle Talk did a joint report, and Wrestle Talk had this photo that was circulated of Tony Khan looking like he's been mysteriously caught on camera, and Shane, who doesn't look like he has any care in the world that this photo gets out and circulated. And Fightful added that this apparently took place, this meeting, at a private airport in Arlington, Texas, where, of course, that's where AEW is holding their residency. And this was done at an airport on Monday, and just stating that they were there to discuss possibilities moving forward. Now, my question to you, Wai, is not even so much of like what becomes of this. What is the value of this if you are both sides of the coin here? If you are AEW / Tony Khan, and what is your value if you are Shane McMahon? Like, obviously, like, I'm not going to guess like what their thinking was, but this photo got out, and I don't think it was, they posed for a photo here. Like, there is certainly some gamesmanship involved here, but what is to gain from either party by working together? Well,
first I want to talk about this photo because I feel like a lot of the suspicion at this point, I haven't spoken about this with you, but I'm sensing from your tone of voice and maybe just from what I've heard is that this feels like it's an attempt to leak, to stage a leak and to stage a candid photograph. And I just want to even try to unpack that, like what let's just speculate that even could be the case. Like what was the direction, behind from the photographer about this, and what was the direction from Shane?
Tony, look more nervous, look more surprised. Like, Shane, just do your thing. This is my surprised face if I'm Shane McMahon.
It's that. It's also like, I mean, let's say this was, completely, I don't know, a ninja took this photo. Yeah, like, you'd figure they would just snap a picture by like peeking the camera lens just barely through the crack of the door and like, taking the photo without them noticing. This felt like it was somebody deliberately knocking on the door saying, smile for the camera, and then flash, and then like getting these two, like, this is all just to say, I think people should have a reason to be suspicious because, number one, this is professional wrestling, and anything that generates any sort of discussion is something that you can, perhaps consider to be marketing. And just the idea that these two somehow in this private room were to just get caught and both turn their head towards looking at the camera, and then this suddenly being released on a Wednesday, again, it's more than enough reason for us to, I think, be suspicious. But so what, right? This is professional wrestling. Does it spark enough interest to get us excited about what might be to come here? And that goes towards maybe your question, John. What does each side have to gain? Well, I think, for AEW, we've seen Tony seems to love these type of publicity stunts. He seems to be at this point in a place where I think he's just looking for any sort of conversation about AEW. I mean, mostly, hopefully positive, but just the type of conversation that I think will reach outside of the usual audience that tunes into Dynamite every single week. And I think this is one of those, the prospect of a McMahon joining the rival, company. And that alone might be enough, for him to want to consider doing something here. Again, it's to attract an audience that might not be watching AEW right now. Doesn't necessarily mean they're watching the WWE, but just, doing something big enough to just get people to pay attention to what's going on in AEW. And for Shane McMahon, I think that answer is kind of obvious. He didn't leave this, his last showing in professional wrestling with very, with his
memories. Quads in check.
He did not leave with his quads in check, no. And knowing him at his age, wanting to, just reach for that next adrenaline high. And certainly, like, I think he probably has some sort of ego within himself where he wants to be able to show that, hey, I'm no longer part of my dad's company. I went out looking, like a guy who shouldn't be in the ring. I want to reclaim my image. I want to have a great send-off the way like a Steve Borden was able to have. And where's the best place I can go? It's AEW. What do you think?
So I look at it, and I think to your point, I think Tony Khan is looking for anything that's going to, I think we know that in Tony Khan, anything that is going to generate exactly what you and I are engaging in right now is considered just, it's It's just you're pumping energy into the AEW speculation game, and hopefully that would lead to people like tuning in just for the idea, is Shane McMahon going to show up? I think it's one of those would get a great pop. I more so look at it as though it's for a lot of people that probably are not following even pro wrestling, that just the idea of a McMahon on this competitor's programming, anyone can understand that in terms of this like palace intrigue that people have of this, you know, a McMahon that's showing up on the other networks programming. I don't know if there's a whole lot of value beyond that, but I mean, AEW has made a lot other signings that don't get half that level of interest. And if Shane comes in, sure, you could have a role for him. I can understand why right now they're looking for all these different things, and this probably is beneficial to both. I think Shane wants his name and face out there, and you'd be blind not to look at this as like a subtle hint from Shane about, like, I'm sure if he had his priority, it would be back in WWE if he's going to do something with wrestling. And by doing this, I mean, this is quite the statement in and of itself, just meeting with Tony Khan and this becoming just something that I think non-wrestling people might focus on just because of the last name being McMahon. As, you know, redundant as that may be, that's going to grab some people's attention of just a McMahon showing up in another company.
It's his path towards achieving some form of relevance in this industry, you know, which he has had none of, you know, and continues to have none of the further his father is away from this business, right? So, I mean, what becomes of this at this point? I feel the discussion is probably enough if it wasn't already a planned thing and that this was just all marketing. I feel this sort of discussion and this sort of like response has been enough for Tony to like seriously consider it. What do you think are the negatives of doing something like this?
I don't think Shane would be a cheap hire. I mean, this is somebody that has, you know, throughout this whole return that he had back in 2016, he had divested himself of all of his WWE stock, and at a time when the stock was a fraction of what it would become. I mean, it was that would be a tough one for me to swallow, seeing at what that stock grew into, and you sold it like around 2009 or so, when it was just
that would
like,
hurt.
Yeah, like that's one when you're talking like a stock that was like under $20 at that period, and it would grow to be well over 100 during some of those peak periods. But regardless,
you can't predict the market.
You cannot predict the market, and he did not. But anyway, that is to say, like there's nothing really holding him from this. But I still feel it would be costly for AEW. If I was a performer in AEW, is the idea of Shane McMahon coming in for, you know, not just significant money, but you have to justify that money and have him in a significant spot, even if it's in a, you know, part-time role. I don't know. I've always kind of underestimated the appeal that Shane McMahon has had with people, that when he came back in 2016, I mean, that was a huge reaction he got, and I've always thought it's like it's a short-term thing you can do with Shane. I never found him to be that dynamic of a performer, but there's clearly an interest, and I think the novelty of Shane in AEW, you will be able to coast on that for a period. But you are like, how is it branding AEW? I mean, is it good publicity you're getting? Is it just attention for the sake of attention because of this? And I just think a lot of people look at AEW and are trying to understand what the vision is of this company and trying to understand what it was. And I would say that at the start, you clearly had that identity, and your identity is going to change over time. That's inevitable. And this would be another one, like a McMahon being, you know, a prominent figure on your show. Is that good or bad over the long term?
Yeah. For me, I think it's all...
It also attaches you in a weird way to Vince McMahon, too, which is, you know, I know it's his son. There's nothing against his son, but it does, you know, it does invite, if you want this guy out there in front of media and stuff, like you are, you know, it is the son of Vince McMahon, and he's a pretty troubled, toxic figure at the moment.
Sure. But that shouldn't disqualify his son from, being employed by another company.
It doesn't, but I mean, he's there because he is Vince McMahon's son.
He would be asked a question like that if he is at a press conference, or at least you would hope, right? So I think it's all well and good for like Tony to engage in these publicity stunts like once in a while, but I think they always have to have some sort of eye towards long-term storytelling and really a long-term benefit for a company rather than just that 1 week spike. So for me,
Shane against Darby Allin.
I mean, I'm sure that is a number one demand for a lot of audiences, but why? I mean, you can understand why, but I just also remember that one of the participants in that equation is 50 something years old and just came back from tearing a quad without doing a whole lot. So I don't know how many of those dream matches I want to see from Shane, but like Shane, I actually quite enjoyed when he was just playing SmackDown general manager as a straight on babyface with Bryan Danielson. And I feel like as a manager type of role, as maybe even an authority figure type of role, like he could do a decent job. With the occasional match, as well, that you could bill for a pay-per-view, I think there's some attraction there. Again, it comes down to story. It comes down to like the type of character they could have for him. The type, like what sort of talents he could get over. Can you imagine a Shane McMahon, Kazuchika Okada pairing?
None of this is exciting to me. None of this is intriguing to me, and I don't
I just
like.
think
Is that a television match that might draw some novelty? Perhaps.
I'm not saying a match. I'm saying a mouthpiece and
I see. I understand what you mean.
Tandem. Yes.
Yeah. Listen, it's all in what you deem as the attention you are seeking. Like this will grab you attention for sure, and I think that was evidenced today. But it's it's one that it's not like a stunning one to me either. If you look at just the way that things were trickling out over the past month, and the idea of these two meeting is not shocking that these two would have a meeting. And I think this was, if anything, this is like kicking the tires to kind of generate and see what that level of interest is, and if they pursue things further.
Tires have been kicked.
There you go. Yeah. The G1 today. So they had their latest show. Today was a B block show. And again, we will have the show with Bruce and Kate up later tonight. But just quickly going through the results today, you had Yota Tsuji defeating Oleg Boltin in what was like another like fine Oleg Boltin match. Yota Tsuji avoided the kamikaze at the end to hit the Gene Blaster, winning in 10 minutes and 9 seconds. So Tsuji goes up to 2-3 in the tournament with 4 points, equal to Oleg Boltin. Hanare and Yuya Uemura had a awesome match that went 15 and a half minutes. Just tremendous action from these two. I continue to really be impressed with Uemura, and Hanare is also having a great tournament. And they had Gabe Kidd on commentary with Walker Stewart, and I was kind of, I think Gabe Kidd has a great character, and I was a little hesitant about the shtick for all the tournament matches, but he found like a pretty good balance. He went from kind of being his character, doing his promo style, and that does not gel with commentary over 2 hours, but he kind of found his rhythm, and I would say it worked. He stayed in the heel presence with Walker Stewart, but that is to say, like, him and Hanare are kind of doing their own deal where they're in separate blocks, but getting into each other's face, because on the other show, Hanare was on commentary, and you had them getting into it. But this was an excellent match. You could probably do a coin toss for this and the main event as the best match of the show. El Phantasmo and Jeff Cobb. Cobb won with the Tour of the Islands. Cool spot where Phantasmo did a reverse cross and was caught into the tour. Good match. I wouldn't say it was like either guy's best match of the tournament, but it was fine. Phantasmo's now stuck at 1-4 with 2 points, so he is he might even be on the brink of elimination at this point, given his low point total. Ren Narita and Hiroki Goto. I will just recap the end. We had Narita grabbing hold of Marty Asami. There was a low blow by Narita, and then the double cross as Walker Stewart by goddamn Ren Narita, who won in 12-17. And this was a Ren Narita match with the assistance of House of Torture. It was a match. And then the main event, Konosuke Takeshita and David Finlay. Excellent main event with a raging fire that was countered, and Finlay hit the overkill in 1823. The final 2 minutes of counters here from the attempt at a power drive knee, and there's a poison Rana from Takeshita into a blue thunder bomb. Just sensational. The end. Like, these two had terrific chemistry with each other, and Takeshita remains the performer of the G1 in my opinion. But for a more thorough review, you can check out the cafe later tonight. The B block now features a 6-way tie for first place. So it's pretty much first, second, and third place. That's what the B block consists of. David Finlay, Takeshita, Hanare, Ren Narita, Jeff Cobb, and Yuya Uemura all tied with 6. Goto and Tsuji and Oleg Boltin with 4, and Phantasmo at 2. And they're off Thursday and Friday and come back with shows on Saturday and Sunday.
All right.
So you have 2 days to catch up with.
I'll try my best.
Okay. Then Giulia announced that she is wrapping up with Marigold on August the 19th. She announced she'll have a final series of shows, and this was announced on Sunday's card, and she is going to be... where's the match here that they are having? Well, anyway, August 19th is the final show, and then I guess she will be Orlando bound.
Yeah. America bound.
America bound. I mean, for all we know, maybe she's going to find a connection flight and end up in TNA.
That's not out of the question, I guess. No. Maybe a short layover.
Anything is possible. So that show will go down Cork and Hall August 19th as Giulia will be heading off. And then final notes here. Raw on Monday. This was the show on Sci-Fi doing 1,412,000 viewers and a 0.51, which of the past episodes that have ever aired on Sci-Fi for Raw, this was their highest demo number, not their highest audience. But interestingly enough, the Olympics were on both NBC and USA Network, so that wasn't like they beat the Olympics, but they did beat the USA Network coverage that night on Sci-Fi. So, and by a significant margin, a 0.51 to a 0.40. And NXT, the Great American Bash on Tuesday night did 468,000 viewers and a 0.15. Again, not a great total viewership number compared to a normal week, but this was not a normal week. You were on a different network and on Sci-Fi, but again, it was their largest demo that NXT has ever done for a Sci-Fi episode as well. So I would take those as positives that, these are numbers you can't put too much weight into being moved networks, but the demos for both were strong by their own comparison points. So there you go. Week 1 on Sci-Fi, and they'll do it all again next week. If you missed NXT, I thought the main event was a lot of fun with Roxanne Perez and Thea Hale. This crowd got into that match so much with like the near submissions from Thea Hale, all of the counters. Roxanne Perez is fantastic, and I think Thea Hale's just a terrific babyface as well. So I enjoyed this main event quite a bit. They have great crowds for this Orlando crowd. It's incredible, the amount of enthusiasm this crowd has on a weekly basis.
Oh, they can't ask for a better audience for a developmental brand, They do really contribute to making people feel like they're stars before they hit to the main roster. We also had Joe Hendry in concert for the first time on WWE TV.
What did you think about the concert?
They're at the level of like, I think the Joe Hendry types of concerts. Like, it was okay. Like, I think really corny, but I think people like his corniness. What I don't get is why he was so pissed off about Gallus's reaction afterwards. Why do you think they were pissed off? You're singing about them. You're making fun of them. He was seething leaving the Performance Center. Yeah. That was like, he couldn't understand why these guys were so mad.
Yeah, this is just a fun song of mocking you. So yeah, they're going to do Joe Coffey and Joe Hendry next week, as Joe Hendry's on NXT as much as he is on TNA, maybe more now with NXT as well. So there you go. Check out Up Next from the Poison Rana crew. All right, all of your news can be found at postwrestling.com. And today's Pollock and Thurston, there was a ton of news on the show if you want to hear us go through all of that, which is on the Wrestlenomics and Post Wrestling feeds. Tonight we go to Greenville, South Carolina. Last number from WrestleTix, 2,931. And yeah, did the crowd stand out in any way to you on this show?
They were quieter this week.
Yeah.
They felt like a more sparse crowd. How big is the building? Like, how much does the building hold? Do you know?
Bigger than that. Yeah.
like considerably bigger because it sounded almost like cavernous at times. Like
Yeah, like that's like the main building in Greenville that WWE always runs. I thought, in particular, even like the main event, like I felt like this crowd, they were a little restless by the time that main event hit, and they still had an hour of Rampage to sit through.
the opening
afterward.
segment I felt was the most interesting one to discuss with crowd reactions.
This was really interesting because you have the heel American and the babyface European wrestler in the Carolinas. So this was interesting because you knew that going in and how they were going to structure this. So MJF comes out and he's pretty much doing Andy Kaufman here with the Southern accent to mock the trailer park trash capital of the world and tells them to keep their meth-addicted mouths shut and calls Will Ospreay a red coat terrorist. And he'll be a one-man militia at All In, and he's going to beat Ospreay again. And he tells the audience to stand up for their American hero when Will Ospreay charges toward the ring, and he brings up what MJF said about his family. There was no specific remembrance of the grandmother line, but that's what he was referring to here. And he says, no one acknowledges your American championship because you tossed the international title in the trash can. He talks about all the past champions, including himself, that fought like their lives were on the line each week. MJF is not at that level. And MJF says, Ospreay, you're not going to make it to All In because tonight everybody dies. And yeah, you had Ospreay really trying to put over, I know I'm from the UK, but what I have in common with these American fans is we are proud of our heritage and where we are from. And Ospreay had to do a lot of heavy lifting here because this crowd, it's like we saw when the American title was introduced, produce a USA chant. Like they're kind of having to fight backwards here, that they understand MJF's the heel and Ospreay is the babyface, but these crowds are just... There's a reason a lot of these patriotic gimmicks work because it's very easy with these crowds.
Yeah, I certainly this MJF character is going to work in Wembley. It's going to be a great heel character.
Oh, it's going to be awesome on Friday at Arena Mexico, which
sure, yes. But in Greenville, South Carolina, I mean, this was maybe unfortunate timing of a date like this, but really I think the wrong time for this sort of dichotomy of characters. It was a very difficult position to put Will Ospreay in, having to come out there and essentially try to heel on the baby face representing America, almost like threatening to change the title back from the U.S. title into the international title, which the people in South Carolina, I don't think necessarily were trying to cheer. If I think they could have redone it, I think Ospreay should have just come out there and did a more straightforward trash talking promo without really kind of identifying any of the Americanness of it all. Like, I think as soon as he kind of got into it, it kind of felt like, what's a Brit doing telling us how American an American is, right? Like it just didn't feel like it was anything he needed to get into. I also think it's also hard to accuse Max of not having work ethic because we just saw the man wrestle for 60 minutes, first of all, and we're also not that far removed from his babyface run where, like, all of those things, like, we were in love with this guy. And he turned out of nowhere, but they've never really made any sort of case for why we should actually hate him. He has shown to be a very worthy people's champion. So to just have Ospreay just call him out for being not representative of America, I mean, it just they're words that don't really kind of feel that have that much substance behind them at this point.
Yeah, it's tough. And next week they're in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and then Norfolk, Virginia the following Wednesday. So, I mean, those will be your states that the MJF character will be featured in, unless we get some collision appearances in Texas.
Sure. I mean, I think Max was trying himself to turn the crowd on him, but I think a lot of it's going to be reliant on him to, insult these audiences and somehow make him turning this US title into a U.S. title feel like it's something that we Americans should not want.
Will Ospreay against Lance Archer. They explained they've had 3 singles matches in the past, 2 won by Will Ospreay, who looks like he's a child next to Lance Archer in this graphic.
I think we all look like children next to Lance Archer. Yeah.
There's a choke slam to Ospreay immediately, and then Archer is sent to the floor. Will goes for the space flying tiger drop, but it's caught by Archer and scoop slams him on the floor. And Ospreay is being beaten down, gets caught going for an Os cutter into a black hole slam. And then Archer is knocked off balance off the turnbuckle. And Archer tries to stop him by the throat, but it's turned into a one-man Spanish fly. Crowd pops big for that near fall. And then the Os cutter lands, hits a hidden blade, but Archer kicks out at 1. And then the elbow pad comes off, hits a second hidden blade, keeping Archer down at 11 minutes, 22 seconds.
Yeah, I thought it was a good standard David Goliath match, like fine for TV, but nothing, in my opinion, I would go out of your way to see. I think Lance Archer is great, but for me, it's really impossible for me to buy him in as any sort of contender at this point. The audience almost seems to know the moment he comes out and he's promoted for a match without any sort of build, ahead of time. He's just really here to put the focus guy over. And that kind of took away really any sort of drama for the match for me.
Yeah, not to say that the crowd was down for this. They got into a lot of the big near falls, but I've seen these two have better singles matches together, and I think with a louder crowd, I think they would have been that much more into this, but fine opener. Like, yeah, I wasn't complaining too much about this match. MJF attacks Ospreay with a brainbuster in the ring and then puts on the ring and goes to attack when Kyle Fletcher runs out in a crop top. Wait, when you come to my rescue, you've got to wear a full shirt.
A crop top and a gold watch, bleach blonde hair. Okay.
This guy's got some interesting looks over the years, particularly his hair that's been under examination from a lot of people. But he has he definitely needs a stylist. Great talent.
I don't dislike this. You think this is a bad look?
Well, if we saw him from head to toe, you would see like this is something doesn't go quite right here. He explains to Don Callis that I know he's out of the Don Callis family, but he's my best friend. He's my brother. And MJF, you're a narcissistic asshole, and I'm MJF's karma coming to bite you in the ass. MJF says, I don't care about America. And then Fletcher notes that he's from Australia. But while I was in Australia, I dreamed of coming to America. And the crowd is like, yeah, everyone comes here.
It's the Arnold playbook.
Yes.
Even if he's not from the country, he always wanted to be here, which Americans just love to hear. Yes.
That's right. You don't have to fully denounce your country, but you have to leave.
Close to it, yeah.
Says this is where all his dreams have come true, and he challenges MJF to come to the ring. MJF is seething. He teases coming to the ring, but then turns him down, calls him a wannabe Will Ospreay, and says, you can face me on my time, and says, next week on Dynamite, I'm going to kangaroo kick your face off, and you're going to have the same fate as Daniel Garcia. I'm going to break your neck and leave you in a pool of your own blood. And I think there's a good chance of that happening next week.
Mm-hmm. I forgot the kangaroo kick came as a result of the Aussie Open.
That's right.
So very interesting how the roles are completely reversed. That's right. I think Fletcher in this promo was able to do what Ospreay was not able to do, and that's to give as a foreign babyface, give a great promo against the heel American in his own country. He I think cut one of the best promos I've ever heard him cut.
I thought he was very good in this role.
Yeah, like this almost like the mic time for him in this sort of like, I don't know, setting, in the opening segment of the show has been pretty rare, if ever. And he took full advantage of it. He came here very prepared, knowing that this was like almost an audition for him. And I thought he killed it. Like, I didn't know he had this sort of delivery and passion within him. I don't know if it's something new that he's developed, but this was like kind of his big sort of way, stage to show the world against MJF. And he did it, man. So, you very promising, talent, even more promising than I think, initially we all felt.
He's a great talent, and he, as much as he had that killer match at the Supercard show back on Mania weekend, it was his performance at the press conference that I was really impressed with this guy, just in terms of how he carried himself and just like a good natural talker. Obviously, he's not doing a wrestling promo in a press conference setting, but he was a standout for me on that weekend from that ROH card. So
he's got youth, certainly. He's got size. He's got obviously the ability to perform wrestling. But I think he's also showing the drive and the motivation to, like, you know, you might kind of speak in jest about like him searching for new looks, but it shows there's desire within him to experiment, to try to find the thing that clicks, you know, rather than just rest and be criticized for, you know, not having a stylist by podcasters that are out there.
Listen, I'm just being honest. That's all. Alex Marvez is with the Learning Tree. Big Bill has a cake to celebrate Jericho being FTW champion for 102 days. And Jericho notes how a cake always ends up in someone's face in a wrestling segment, which is true, but not tonight. And he explains Shibata, you're all alone now. No Samoa Joe, no Hook. And next week, Brian Keith is going to take on Shibata. And Brian Keith is left with Marvez and tells him to eat that damn cake if you respect Chris Jericho. And amazing, I thought for sure this cake was going to make an appearance later in the night. Nothing. There was no cake that made its way into anyone's face on this show.
Jericho was speaking the truth.
Willow Nightingale, Kris Statlander, eliminator bout for the CMLL World Women's Championship. We had Willow with a series of short arm clotheslines, tries for the Dr. Bomb. It's blocked. And then Willow hits a DVD on the edge, goes after Stokely, and turns around being struck by Statlander, who then comes off the top into a power bomb as Willow catches her. There's a 450 splash by Statlander, sending her off the turnbuckle. And then a 2 count. Hathaway passes her a chain as Aubrey Edwards is distracted. And there's a discus lariat by Statlander, nailing Willow and pinning her in the eliminator bout. 9 minutes, 58 seconds, so we will get a CMLL women's title match between these two at a date to be determined. Fine match. It's okay.
I mean, I liked it. I liked their last match more together. You know, I felt like there was more on the line, whereas this kind of felt like it was more of an interlude or a setup for their CMLL World title match. Now, is that going to take place in AEW or CMLL?
I don't know why you would dedicate time to this if this was going to be done at Arena Mexico.
Right. Yeah,
but they're also, I mean, they're doing a lot of crossover with CMLL and sending them a lot of key stuff. Like they are really going above and beyond. Like you've got Claudio going down there soon. You're sending MJF for there on Friday. I mean, you just had the Lucha Brothers and Pac. I guess it's possible.
Is this a big match for a CMLL audience? I mean, I'm not sure how popular Statlander would be down there. So I could see this being a Dynamite match. I still like the match. I thought these two, you know, obviously they have a great chemistry. They both hit hard. They both like work really strong, and I think their moves just really look good on each other.
If I had not watched the House of Torture match today, I would have been maybe more receptive to the finish, but it was a bit of a groan with the chain.
Yeah. For me, it's more like it's a title I just don't really know anything about nor really care about. Like Willow, I think we just saw like lost the title that she seemed to really care for. Now she just has another one. And I don't know what you could do about this because I mean, if you're going to recognize one partner's promotion's titles, you kind of have to recognize all your partner's promotional titles. But it just continues to continue that, you know, bring up that conversation about there just being too many titles and how many do we actually care about?
I don't think there's enough titles. I think there's some gaps that could be filled.
There needs to be more eliminator matches, though.
Yeah, well, this one, if you remember, it was like it was Statlander who suggested the eliminator bout. She should have just shot her shot and gone for the title match. She would have been champion by now. Yeah. Then a chair is introduced, so Statlander whacks her on the back, and then security comes in. And Statlander starts beating up security, which is such a babyface spot. And then Hathaway has to calm down Statlander to end the segment. Danielson comes out. They showed highlights of his speech with the mentor, Jeff Jarrett, last week. And he comes out, huge yes chants. And Bryan Danielson says, "It's great to be here in Greenville. And I'm not just saying that for a cheap pop, which you just gave me. I really mean it. Because me and my wife got our engagement photos done here." They're like, "Yeah, we have some great backdrops. We love the downtown area." Like, this is the most ridiculous start to a serious promo I have ever heard.
So ridiculous that, I mean, it can't be anything but true.
Well, he says, "You know, and me and my wife, Bree, we were looking at those photos recently, and you don't realize it's the good old days until it's almost gone." The crowd's chanting, "No, no." He says, "I'm here to talk about two things, presents and promises." And he says, "I was present ever since I came out of retirement, and I've been enjoying the good old days. It's the most fun of my career being here in AEW. I felt present in the back. I felt present walking out here when you chanted for me, and the crowd starts chanting, and he seems genuinely moved here. He needs to take a second. And he made a promise. He promised his daughter that when she turned 7, he would stop wrestling full time. And he said that when he signed with AEW, it would be his last contract, and that contract expires tomorrow. And based on the reaction from this stunned audience, I don't know what their YouTube numbers are like in Greenville, because no one watched that video where he revealed this to Renee last week.
Yeah. Maybe
they must have been so confused. Wait, your contract's up tomorrow? Does that mean it's done? How are you doing this match in 3 weeks?
I think the concept of extensions wasn't necessarily made clear in the promo. Maybe he could have added that. Maybe
he had to describe my lack of presence when I was hurt means that my promise of being done on August 1st is being extended. My presence is required beyond this end date. So he said, during this time, I've kicked a lot of heads in, but I have not won the AEW title yet, which was another one of his promises. This is my last shot at Wembley. The doctors, my family, they don't want me to wrestle, but I'm promising to go to Wembley. I promise to be present for that moment, and I promise to give everything I have. And it may be the greatest line of a wrestling promo. And I promise to give 100% where 101% is not possible. It's like, yes, after all this time, finally. I always hated that. I always hated that as a kid when someone say, I'm going to give 110%. I'm like, not possible.
Totally, yes. By the end of this speech, I was ready to, jump into a football field and just ram somebody down.
So he promises to go all in with his body and soul. And then out comes Swerve. And Swerve explains that he respects Bryan Danielson. You inspired a generation, including myself. And normally, I'd be rooting for you to have this moment. But this is Swerve Strickland's time. I came to AEW and I too promised to win the title, and I did. And he said, I'm one of a kind. I'm so ahead of my time that 10 years from now, people are going to want to press rewind. And if you want to go and rewatch one thing on this show, watch Bryan Danielson's reaction to this line and how Swerve kept a straight face when he got this out, because Danielson thought this was the corniest line he has ever heard. He just looks down. He's like, I can't believe you said
I don't know
that.
if he felt that. Come on.
Well, he had quite the look on his face. I'm projecting. Okay.
Yeah,
he seemed very present in the moment in taking this line. He said that you've been kicking people's heads in, Danielson, but you can't handle it when people start kicking back. This is not an achievement award. It proves you're the best in the world, and I am the best. You lost to Will Ospreay, and you got hurt. I beat Ospreay. You got pinned in Anarchy in the arena. I led Team AEW to victory in blood and guts. Last year, I was at All In. You were too hurt to even fly to London. And maybe your body just can't hold up to being a champion anymore. And says, you're getting into the ring with the most dangerous man in AEW. And when I'm done, you may never walk again. And as Swerve goes to leave, Danielson says, Swerve, I've got one more promise. If I don't win this title, I will never wrestle again. And Excalibur's like, oh, we've heard him talk about being a part-time wrestler, but what does this mean? And it is title versus career as they shake on it. And Danielson says that he will keep that promise, and Swerve says, keep that promise with your family. So we've got a big-time stipulation for August 25th for the title versus Danielson's career, and maybe an explanation was needed about how his contract is working out for all of this, because I could see some people being a little confused by that. But a big segment, and I think this makes this this really solidifies this as this was already to many people the main event. I mean, this is the unquestioned hook on the show. That is Danielson's career on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about Bryan's promo first. I thought this was actually a really great promo from Bryan Danielson tonight. I mean, to me, like, all of Bryan's most memorable promos are ones where he's not necessarily talking about kicking somebody's ass. They're the ones where he's either talking about retirement or actually retiring or talking about coming back from retirement. And this was certainly one of those.
This is a good cycle for him to go through.
He's the best when he's talking about retirement, yes. These tend to be the ones where like they feel obviously the most authentic. They feel like they're more conversations with a good friend rather than any sort of in-character performance. And this was one of those. Like he gave us some of that, you know, Danielson wisdom. That sounds very true to life, whether or not, you know, he was like saying it on a wrestling stage. There were moments in this where I think he was fighting back genuine smiles and tears. And then Swerve had to come in here, and he's, you know, we talk about Ospreay being in a tough spot. Swerve is also in a really tough spot in all of this. He's somebody now who has to come in, and he is a babyface. Just remember Blood and Guts last week, the top babyface of the entire team. He's a babyface having to come out here to oppose a guy who's a bigger babyface than he is, despite him not being the champion. And I thought Swerve really handled the situation really well. He came in full of confidence and just, I think, stayed very true to his character without any sort of sudden shifts towards like being a stereotypical heel. Like he's very likely, I don't know if he'll get booed at Wembley, but I don't know if he'll get cheered very much, at least, you know, in the closing moments of the match, because this is, you know, almost, it's a position where he's Shawn Michaels against Ric Flair. You know, he's sort of the reluctant babyface who has to put the old dog, Old Yeller, out in the shed. And I thought Swerve just handled himself really well here. He brought up great points arguing about why he's better. And I think the stipulation is wonderful. You know, first, it's a commitment to the crowd to tell them that if you're going to pay a ticket or if you're going to buy this pay-per-view, you're going to see something special. You'll either see Bryan Danielson win this championship in front of a stadium crowd, his first AEW championship, or you're going to see Bryan Danielson's last match. And either of those things, I think, are worth the price of admission. So it's I think one of the biggest cards Toni can play for this pay-per-view and this match, and I think it's actually a great move.
Does this lean you towards? Does this give you kind of an idea of like one way to go over another for the outcome of this match?
Yeah. So I don't think it's out of the question that Danielson would have had some sort of change of heart, and instead of like coming back periodically for certain matches, you know, he would just say, "I'm just going to be done with it altogether." I don't think that's I don't think that's not a possibility. I also think that it's possible he wins, and if he does win, what sort of presence is he going to have with the championship belt? You know, if he's no longer going to be a full-time performer, or can he be on a part-time? Can AEW do a part-time Roman Reigns style of champion with Bryan Danielson there, or does he simply win it and then drops it, you know, in relatively quick fashion, you know, after maybe 2 or 3 months? That's also very possible as well. I think if I have to lean towards one direction, it would be Danielson winning the championship and then moving on to maybe a part-time career after that.
I think that the best way to capitalize off of this, like this is such a big match, and I think you want to end with that big moment, is Danielson wins the championship, and then he announces, I cannot just leave this title vacant. And he says, I'm going to go until I lose this title. And then
love it.
He only needs to wrestle on pay-per-view, but you have the notion that anytime you buy an AEW pay-per-view for the next however many months, it could be the last Bryan Danielson match. Because once he loses this title, doesn't mean he's retired forever, but he loses the title and he's disappears for a long time, and it's a while before we see him. And it's kind of like the Ric Flair storyline. Like, I'll go until I lose, and you do that as champion. And that could be, he could defend it at Grand Slam. It gets you a reason to buy the pay-per-view in Tacoma, Washington, that I think everyone expects him to do. But it's one match a month that he could do as just a pay-per-view performer, and every pay-per-view, is this going to be the last Bryan Danielson match?
I love that. Now, how would he reason that after saying what he said today about keeping promises to his family?
I think the key is that I have worked my entire career for this championship, and I think it all comes down to the promo. Like, I've got the blessing of my family that I can't walk away from the school that has eluded me.
Brody Danielson needs to come out there, grab a microphone, and say, Daddy, you can keep wrestling as long as you have that championship.
Yeah, you could. Birdie and Buddy.
It's all up to her.
Could talk him out of the forced retirement. So I think that's one way to go about it, and it could end up back on Swerve, or if you have somebody else in mind. But I think you could get like several months out of that potentially, or you just go to Tacoma. Like that seems to be a potential. That would be logical. But Bryan Danielson is never like the logical outcome. I think he's always thinking outside the box of what to do with. So I think
retire on a rampage in front of the esports arena in Arlington.
That's it. Goodbye, everyone. To Beast Mortos.
He'll retire in ROH. He'll retire on Honor Club. Yes.
Yeah. The Bella Brains. He'll lose the title in a trivia contest. Danielson is seen walking to the back. Renee tries to get a comment from him, and he runs into Team Jarrett, and Jeff is over the moon, says, "That's the Danielson I'm talking about." Danielson says, "You want to see if I'm all in? Let's see if you're all in next week." And yes, folks, we are getting Bryan Danielson versus Jeff Jarrett in Winston-Salem, North Carolina next week.
I am into this. All right, like
everyone's into this.
I don't. I mean, I feel like Jarrett matches for me, like throughout this AEW run, have kind of been like, okay, like I'm not sure why he's here. I'm not sure why he's wrestling so much, but like I'm kind of getting a kick out of it in these sort of tag matches with Jay Lethal. But ever since the Owen and that promo, I'm into Jeff Jarrett as a singles wrestler. I'm into Jeff Jarrett as a serious wrestler, and you don't get a more serious match than a singles match against Bryan Danielson. So. I think the way they play this will be really interesting, how they book it, what type of wrestling style that they do. But Danielson, the historian that he is, and Jarrett obviously being the veteran that he is, they could do something very special and unique.
Roderick Strong, Roosh, and Beast Mortos versus Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, and Tomohiro Ishii. We saw Cassidy going with like multiple revolutions over Mortos and then just slipped off the shoulders afterwards, and they kind of just glided to the next sequence here. Roosh and Briscoe went at it, and Briscoe brought a chair into the ring. He's cut off by Strong, but then hit a blockbuster off the apron. There's a stun dog to Mortos as Mark comes in, and after a released German by Ishii, Strong lands on his shoulder, and we see a Revolution DDT to Roderick, followed by the Froggy Bow and Sliding D, but the partners make the save. Mortos hit this Tornillo dive to the floor and then catches Orange Cassidy on the floor, with Roosh hitting a Tope Con Hero. This guy had his working boots on. Mortos with the pop-up Samoan, and then Briscoe attempts to J-Driller, is headbutted by Roosh, and we see Beast Mortos with his tribute to Chuck Taylor with his awful waffle, not identified as such, for the win at 11 minutes and 18 seconds. I was very happy to see Beast Mortos not just get the pin, but also on the ROH champion. And it tells me, to me, he was the big performer last weekend between everyone raving about the Commander match Friday and the hologram match Saturday, and Mark Briscoe and Beast Mortos, like, they're not beating Mark Briscoe for no reason. In fact, if you looked at this lineup, you would have thought it would be like Beast Mortos might have been the guy that would be taking the pin in this entire thing. So I thought the booking of this was very good and promises you a match that, quite frankly, I hope they put on Dynamite as opposed to ROH. But that looks to be an ROH title match.
I mean, they could, they could put it on Dynamite, but yeah, I thought it was a great mid-card match. Like, the Conglomeration are a great mid-card act. They're the team that's there to guarantee a great trios match every single week, and then they can be on a side and they can hit the randomizer for the other side, and almost every combination is going to be great because excuse me, everybody, because the talent is so strong. In this match we had 2 bulls and a pit bull, and a chicken.
That's right. We did. And we had a bull, a pit bull, a beast, and a chicken. You're right.
Yeah.
And
that's all I have to say.
Whatever Roderick Strong identifies as well. Mustache. Yeah. Fun match.
And
I enjoyed this. The fun middle of the show Dynamite Trios match that I enjoy. The Acclaimed and Billy Gunn, they warn us that they're coming to Collision, which airs Saturday at 5 p.m. I think for all we talked about how WWE, man, did they make everyone aware when they were moving to Sci-Fi. I think they mentioned once in the last segment, oh, by the way, Collision's on at 5 p.m. this coming Saturday. Not exactly the same level of awareness, but The Acclaimed are coming. Max Caster calls himself the best wrestler alive and the MVP of Blood and Guts. And they state that they were kind of healing here on the people in the Carolinas. They called them simple people, but they wanted to come here to be welcomed by FTR, who did not show up here in their own hometown. So we're going to go to Texas. I guess this made no sense. It was like, okay, they didn't show up in their hometown, but they are confident they're going to get into an airplane and fly to Texas, and they'll meet them there. That seems like a really ambitious trip.
I'm sure there was some logic there. But why weren't FTR on this one?
I don't know. They just weren't here.
Interesting. Like, are they on the Rampage or whatever they're taping after this?
I don't know.
Okay, whatever. Doesn't matter. But I mean, I thought that this was Caster and Bowens showing a bit of a meaner streak in their promos, and I think it's showing some successful evolution of this team. After last week, they certainly have a bit more of a fresher coat of paint about them. It's what like sort of the New Day were trying to accomplish last year, where like they were doing hardcore matches and trying to show that they're not the fun-loving guys. They could be serious and they could be mean and aggressive when they want to. Except like when you see a man stab another man with scissors repeatedly, I think that becomes a lot easier to accept. And the Acclaimed right now are like doing a good job of convincing me that they are a meaner version of their usual selves, and it's a much needed evolution, that this team I think has been lacking for a bit.
Renee's sit down with Mariah May. She is asking Mariah May to explain her heinous attack on Toni Storm, and May just looks at her and says, "Do you watch the show? Isn't it obvious?" She says, "It's been so clear." And Renee explains, "Toni never did anything to you." She said, "Exactly. She was the perfect target. She told me that this business would eat her alive, and it was my time to eat. And now I won't take any more questions." So she got up and she walked away, and I was left puzzled at the purpose of this segment.
I think just to continue to show you the character, and mainly just to like remind you about the match, to keep it somewhat warm or hot to some people, and really just I think set up the Toni Storm bit. I wonder if she was even in town. This could have just been filmed like last week or whenever.
Yeah, I thought there was nothing to this. And then we had Toni Storm come out, and she's snapped again. She's all in black, and she's got her title and the shoe, and said that she loved Mariah, and she loved me too. And you find out what you love and then let it kill you. Well, at All In, it's going to be the romance of a lifetime. And she starts blasting herself with the heel of the shoe. I don't know if she was trying to get color here, but she seemed to be trying. And that was that.
Yeah, so the Toni one, I don't know if this was like supposed to be a reference to some movie that I might be missing. I don't know. If it is, if it wasn't obvious enough, I think, to you or I'm assuming plenty of other people might have.
Here's my rule for these, okay? Usually someone will come back. This is like what I've learned, from all these years of comments, okay? Someone's going to say, "Can't believe they didn't know that this was the 1934 speech from blah, 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 blah." It's like, okay, you've made a reference point and you've leaped to the conclusion that makes this great. That's a nice trivia note that this is a nod to some movie scene, but on this own way, you don't know what this is referring to. Was this just good on its own? And to me, it should always be, it holds its own. And if it's a nod to something else, great. That's a cool little side note. But that to me does not carry something like this. And I was left with this. I mean, this was, I don't know. I thought both segments, they've hit some, they had that great angle, and I think that the follow-up has not really come near that level.
I think it's tricky for Toni Storm, somebody who's so steeped into playing a character, when they have to react to a serious act of getting betrayed. How do you still play a character while showing that you're a real person and that you're hurt? And I think we've seen Toni continue to try to be creative and try to stick to playing a character by giving us what she gave us this week. And I think it just kind of left me feeling a bit more confused. I I think she's trying to show that she's deeper into madness now, or at least she's just kind of deeper into a different type of madness as a result of this turn. But it almost like, because the character is still comedic, this performance also felt to me like so over the top that it also came across like it was some attempt to be comedic as well, while also trying to inspire like some form of heartbreak in there. And I thought it was just kind of dancing between like two kind of incongruent feelings, and ultimately just didn't really work. And at least certainly not in the way that like her prior segments had worked. So I don't know if they really hit it this week, and we'll see. They have a few more weeks to really get it there.
They showed highlights from the San Diego Comic-Con where Britt Baker was on the panel, and then Mercedes crashed the panel, and there was a pull apart, and then Tony Khan, who was right there in the center, made the match for All In. Mm-hmm. Camille comes out.
The second biggest announcement to come out of the San Diego Comic-Con.
This trumped anything else. What else came close to this?
Yeah.
The Kevin Smith trailer. So Camille makes her AEW debut, taking on Brittany Jade with Mercedes in her corner. Camille just tackles her in the corner, hits the radio silence, and then a Dominator to win in 1:16.
First, I love the entrance. I mean, I love, like these two coming out together. I think they look, I mean, Shawn and Diesel gets used a lot whenever you have like, like a really tall, silent guy and then a very flamboyant, front man. But like, I think that comparison is a bit more appropriate here, because Monet at this point feels very much like an HBK type of character. And I think it really adds to her presentation. I love the fact that she walks out just like Shawn, steps in front of Camille even though this is Camille's match. And he's holding she's holding the championship, of course. So I just like all of this. I wasn't that impressed with the squash match. Not to say like she had that much time to impress me, but I wasn't that impressed by the moveset from Camille here, doing the Rough Rider and then like the Dominator, which like looked okay, but nothing that made you like gasp or feel like it was that impressive. But it's also still very early.
Monet then welcomes Camille to the Money Incorporation.
Okay, that's just different enough that I don't think it's infringing on any copyright.
Yeah, I don't think her benefactor is Ted DiBiase. I think that would get AEW a whole nother wave of publicity.
Oh yes,
not the publicity they're looking for. And she is the Brick House. Someone's gonna slip on that one when they're calling her that.
Hopefully, it's on pay-per-view or tape show.
She says that she has been victimized by Britt Baker. DMD chant starts, and she has tried to be diplomatic, but Baker has harassed her. She's obsessed with me. And due to the actions at Comic-Con, Britt Baker has been suspended by the EVPs. Which, if we're breaking this down, makes absolutely no sense with Baker being the one on the panel that was approached. But Britt Baker is suspended.
Well, I mean, they're heel EVPs that are, obviously... that have Monet's favor. Did you know that?
Correct. Yes.
So what do we got now? We got 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks before All In. So that's still a lot of time, I guess. They still have to kind of like pause this, delay this. I found it interesting that Monet said some line about this being her house. I thought this would be where Saraya would come in. Didn't happen this week, but it could open the door for her to have something to say about it next week. But I almost feel like Saraya versus Monet is such a big match or at least the biggest match that Saraya could have at this point, because of the history attached to the two of them, that it almost feels like it would be a bit of a waste to just kind of give away, in the build up to the Baker match. So I wonder if there's anything to that, or it just might have been a line that wasn't meant to lead to anywhere.
Yeah, it seems like they're positioning both Saraya and Pac for their own kind of like things for All In, almost as though they're going to this show, and it almost feels like we're going to have just, mystery opponents for them or something like that.
Maybe they're going to be co-hosts, like The Miz for SummerSlam. All In hosted by
Pac and Saraya. Just Pac. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
So then we had Hangman Page and Darby Allin in our main event. Shivani was perplexed. He was going to burn a man referring to Darby in Blood and Guts. So immediately he goes for a coffin drop to the floor, is caught and Germaned onto the floor by Hangman. And they go up the stage. Paige is arguing with Bryce as Darby flips into a stunner, climbs on top of the tunnel for a coffin drop onto the stage, and we go to picture-in-picture. And then they go back to the ring, and the lights go out. And Taz is confused. He thinks that a fuse blew. Now, this happened a few weeks ago when they did... it was involving I think it was the night the Patriarchy won the trios belts, and it wasn't like this. It wasn't prolonged. It was almost like
Were the boards still lit?
I can't remember, but that one I just read as like, okay, that's a House of Black deal. And this one was, yeah, the lights are out, the boards are up. So,
well, I don't know. I have no idea. It could be. I mean, the announcers were certainly calling it out as if like it was something maybe meant to be, or could it have been a legitimate error? I don't know. I don't know enough about like backup systems and all that. Are you interested?
No, definitely not.
The lights turning on and off.
No. I know that AEW loves the lights out gimmick.
I guess when you do this sort of thing, I think it needs to be like, it can't just seem like it's a fuck up of your production, and like you either have to kind of like do the reveal soon enough, or at least like
maybe they should have a crawl on the screen. That was a total screw up on our part. Don't get your expectations up that this is leading to some storyline.
I'll say I completely even forgot about this moment until you brought it up, and if somebody were to bring it up to me again, I would have just considered it a production error. Something went wrong. You know, this is not really a perfect production. It's like something went wrong. And is that really the type, like if it wasn't is that really the type of impression you want to leave?
Do you remember that period when one of Vince McMahon's, like one of his dumb ideas, not his dumbest idea, but one of his dumb ideas was booking stuff to go wrong to emphasize that the show is live? And
I don't remember that, but okay.
There was the famous one where Batista is walking in the back and some fan runs in and does the Batista pose. And they did this for a few weeks where they just had like these just painfully obvious coordinated mistakes. And the idea was you at home are like, oh, wow, this is live. There could be a screw up at any point in time. Like the idea of this it was remarkable.
Yeah, I think this was probably just a mistake, because I think if they wanted to go full lights out, I think they would have dimmed the boards. I also think like no one's going to remember this by next week.
No.
And if it was,
this is also one where the lights going out, typically the audience is just so trained that they go nuts when the lights go out. And that was not the case here. This audience was like,
yeah, I don't
fuse box issue. Like maybe they know the electrical grid is not the strongest in Greenville.
Maybe that was it.
So we continue, and so the steps are placed onto the floor. But first, Paige delivers 3 apron bombs, and Excalibur mentions Bryce is using his discretion because this is a really big match. Yes, he used a lot of discretion in this match, as Hangman then took him and hit a fall-away slam, dropping this guy onto the steps.
Well, the steps happen to be there, okay? He can't help that. Yeah. He's going to do the move anyway.
Then he did a fall-away slam off the turnbuckle, and Paige gets seated on the steps as Darby lands a tope suicida coming back, then starts whipping Hangman with his belt. But again, this is a big-time match. Bryce is like, if you whip him a few more times, I might have a warning for you. And this is when they mention 5 p.m. Eastern, Collision will be on. Darby goes for his own buckshot lariat, but gets cut off. And then Paige hits a pair of dead eyes, goes for the buckshot, but Darby collapses, and he yanks Darby up by the arm. Darby rotates over and transitions to La Magistral Cradle and catches Paige for the pin, causing Paige to have a tantrum as Darby wins, and we go off the air.
I thought that closing sequence was really awesome, Darby, I think, has like done this sort of match before where like he just basically gets beaten up for a majority of the match, but then he'll come back with some incredible technical like pin and cover, and it's fancy looking enough that I think you could justify and believe that it would be enough to catch somebody. And obviously a finish like this, it gives Darby a win heading into the pay-per-view against Jack Perry, but it also somewhat protects Page by having it be a fluke loss, even though he basically dominated for like 90% of this match. It was interesting booking because like Page is so hot right now that I couldn't have seen him losing even a match like this in this fashion. But I also don't exactly know what the plan is for him at All In whereas Darby already has a concrete plan. So could it be that he's not on All In? Or could it be that they feel like there's enough time to heat Page back up and maybe they want to redo this match for some point down the road?
It was a very good match. I would say it was it lacked in heat for portions of the match. They went over 20 minutes, but I thought it was a very strong outing for these two. So
I'm loving Hangman Page right now. I'm loving this like very mean, almost like silent killer who just like is just completely driven crazy by Swerve Strickland. So I'm interested to see like if he's still around Swerve's orbit in these few weeks, or if like they completely separate them while Swerve is attached to Danielson.
Yeah, for all that was discussed about blood and guts of that coming out of there, like Hangman being owed a title shot coming out of that, they did not go that direction, and then losing to the guy that is getting the title shot in September in Darby as well, but can still figure things out, and I think he will be positioned in a pretty strong position for the fall. And then going off, they announced for Collision, Darby, FTR, and Mark Briscoe against Roderick Strong, Mike Bennett, Matt Taven, and Beast Mortos. Coming up on Saturday's episode of Collision, going head-to-head with the WWE pre-show, the 3-hour pre-show.
Oh, wow, that's right, yes.
Last things here, just a few news things that just popped up. So we got a comment, a statement from Shane McMahon about his meeting with Tony Khan, and the reporter that got the scoop, Bully Ray, who conveyed this on Busted Open After Dark. Thanks to Fightful here for posting this. Tony and I were connected through a mutual friend, and we had a great meeting. We talked about many things, but mostly about our shared love for the business and the rewards and challenges of working with family. I congratulated him on the 5-year anniversary of AEW and look forward to how he evolves the business moving forward. Tell me, Shane, about the challenges of working with family.
That's all he flew in for, just to have that chat, huh?
I'm sure that's all they discussed. The 5-year anniversary show, they broke it down segment by segment. Also want to make mention, best wishes to Joey Janela. He wrote tonight, well, I've been in pain for quite a while. Worst the past couple of days, along with insane vomiting. I braved through it to do something at the Limp Bizkit concert today, and I had to check into a hospital. Turns out I have gallstone pancreatitis. My August schedule is uncertain for the time being, and bills are going to be through the roof. I'll be trying to get some merch out there. Should be in here for a minute. And he added that his tour of Japan, which GCW is going over there in a few weeks, could be off the table for him. So best wishes to Joey Janela. That sounds awful, and braving it to make sure that he could do something at the Limp Bizkit concert today. I mean, that's when you hit rock bottom and realize I've got to get to a hospital.
Which part sounds more awful, the gallstone pancreatitis or the Limp Bizkit concert? I don't know. I'm joking. I would love to go to a Limp Bizkit concert, especially.
We just
Joey
missed
Janela.
them.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that sounds really painful. Pancreatitis. Oh, yikes.
All right. Well, there you go, everybody. You are up to date. And now we will head on over to the feedback forum and super chats, if there are any.
No super chats.
Well, let's quickly go through these. Benjamin writes, so Statlander and Willow in an eliminator bout for another promotions title. Not a grudge match to address Statlander turning on Willow. Their third match since the turn now, likely to be on the All In pre-show or at All Out or at Grand Slam. Who knows? It's a lot of big shows to book. I don't think they're holding this one off till Grand Slam. This Dynamite felt clumsy. After such a good run prior to this week, I guess they all can't be winners.
Yeah. They're certainly still trying to tell the story of the grudge and the turn. It just happens to have a title nobody seems to really care about up for grabs as well. But I don't disagree, Benjamin, that it is taking some of the focus away, perhaps, from just the blood feud in and of itself. You would, like, maybe it doesn't have that effect for a lot of people, but like when they kind of make the billing of this match the CMLL, Women's Championship Eliminator, maybe it could have that effect. So, yeah, I could understand that. Let's go to Andrew from Cape Breton, who says, this week's Dynamite was fine, but not on the level of the past few. It was a bit under the radar, but the 2 women's matches 2 weeks in a row when Dynamite had the usual formula of 1 women's match only for so long. Yeah, okay. I feel like it's kind of normal these days to have like 2 women's matches, but I'm also not really counting every single week either. He says that's some progress. It was good to see Beast Mortos get a win. I'm also intrigued by what's going on with Bryan. I'm wondering if his injuries are too much and Wembley could be his last match, or will they give him a 1-month title run before he stops wrestling full time? I hope he stays with AEW, even if it's just in a creative capacity.
Bryan from New Jersey. I really dug this week's show. A lot of good wrestling tonight, from a hot opener to a heated first-time match in the main event. No sign of the Elite, and they put a lot of focus on Swerve and Danielson and MJF versus Ospreay. I love Mark Briscoe, but I also love Beast Mortos, who is a GD mother effing beast. TK, give him his graphic, strap him up, and have him run wild in the Southwest markets. The Acclaimed said they were looking for FTR in their hometown of Greenville, South Carolina. FTR are actually from Asheville, North Carolina. Oops.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, maybe that was the purpose. All right.
Well, FTR have.
I mean, these are all the Carolinas, aren't these? Just like driving distances.
It's to Canadians, it's all the same. I'm sorry.
Edge is from Toronto, according to all this. These billings,
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can you name every?
Yeah. Let me just run across the street to Orangeville.
Exactly. Can you name like what the neighboring provinces to us? Okay, how many of you guys can name that? How anyway?
Name some of the municipalities in Nunavut.
Can you do that?
No.
That's interesting. Okay, well, FTR have a hell of a comeback in them. All right, Cody from Maine.
But they are going to go to Texas, right? Like FTR go to Texas every week. So I mean, never mind. This is.
They live in Arlington now, as does everybody on Collision.
Okay.
We go to Cody from Maine, who says, while it didn't have a near 60-minute classic or a spectacle like Blood and Guts, Dynamite was still a fun watch with good wrestling and story developments. Overall, the build to Allin has been great, and the added stakes of Bryan's declaration tonight only adds to the anticipation. And I was someone who was very much behind Swerve Hangman being the main event. It does make me wonder how long this has been the plan, especially if this is it for Danielson. Could it be that this whole time that we've heard retiring full-time, that the plan was for him to step away completely? If so, it was a good way to make something like the Owen less predictable. The only real negatives I can speak of, the added patriotism aspect of MJF Ospreay, which I could go without and waters down the story, and perhaps certain angles peeking too far out from the show, particularly the 2 big women's feuds. Hopefully, they still have some big story beats planned to keep those two matches hot. And shout out to Camille. In the words of the Commodores, she's a brick house.
Glad you got that one. And Annie writes, quite enjoyed this episode of Dynamite. The All-Star Tag and Darby Hanger were stellar matches. However, I don't like the stip for Bryan and Swerve. This is completely stripped an unpredictable match of its tension and signposted its finish. I don't think so, and not based on our feedback. With the comments Bryan's been making, I can't buy that he's retiring here. I disagree. I think that match will have a ton of drama attached to it, and I think you will absolutely have people believing the idea that Bryan could lose in that situation. All you need is a sliver of doubt, and you have that and then some.
There's more than a sliver. Yeah. I mean, we again don't know the status of his health. We don't know whether or not AEW would be willing to book a part-time champion. I don't think that's something that they've actually really tried before, at least not with their main championship. So there's more than enough, slivers in there.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for the feedback, and thank you for tuning in. So coming up over the next couple of days, we've got a G1 show coming your way probably by the time you hear this, if you're downloading the show, up at postwrestlingcafe.com. Friday, Rewind-A-Way, covering Unforgiven 2001. You can still post your feedback on the forum. And then we're off to Cleveland. SummerSlam coverage on Saturday night. Andrew Thompson will be manning the website on Saturday night during SummerSlam. And then we will be back Sunday with a collision course from Kate and John, and another G1 show Sunday with WH Park and Eric Marcotte. So check out all of that. Keep it posted at postwrestling.com. And for Wai Ting, braving through another show, voice or no voice, he comes through. The true Hugh Jackman of this franchise. The guy we just can't get enough of.
I wish I had his healing powers right now.
Well, he's going to work on them. All right, everybody. Goodbye.